I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. So here we are again. And I invite you to take a moment and just drop in here with me into presence. If your morning has been like mine, you have so many energies that you've been entertaining in your space already, whether yours or other people's. And it's so easy to just continue in that tumble of inundation, really, is how it feels in my system. And even when we choose the things we inundate our system with, it still can be a lot. So just close your eyes right now and receive a couple deep breaths. Receive a breath of just purity, pure oxygen, allowing it to rejuvenate your system and make its way to all of your cells. Saying hello. Imagine that as you exhale next, you can offload any energies in your space that don't belong to you, that aren't serving you. Just allow your system to be a little lighter, or a lot lighter, as much as you're willing to let go of in this moment. And then we arrive. So here we are. And I'm sitting here in my studio with this gorgeous spring sunshine and the crocuses beginning to bloom and, you know, just the first hints of spring, which here in the Midwest is really such a welcome breath of fresh air. And I actually love springtime. I'm really, I was born in April. I'm an Aries. So I always just feel really alive and rejuvenated in the spring. It feels like such possibility and delight, delight unfolding. And so, you know, I've really, as if you've been listening the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about how great my life has been feeling, you know, everything really in alignment and all areas functioning well at the same time, which I feel like I've worked really hard to get to. And so, you know, it's been interesting because I've really been hitting this stride of like, I've got this and everything is good. And everything still is good. And good is also a story. And there have been some interesting signs over the past few days that have been presenting themselves, but I didn't really get the memo on what source was trying to draw my attention to. And I finally did get the memo this morning. And so, of course, I always take that as divine timing, as a synchronistic sign that this must be medicine for more than just me. And so I want to share that with you, what that has looked like. And by way of helping you tune in. So there's this thing that happens when we get on the path of evolution and consciousness where it's like a subtle form of competition and comparison. So it's like we're always looking for who is a few steps behind us on the path so that we can mark that we are in fact moving forward on a path. And there's also, even within our own system, wanting to, we talked about this last week, like hold on to or name that we have handled some issue, that we're just dealing with this last piece of blah, blah, blah. And in my experience, we never actually get fully done with any pieces. Much to my chagrin, because my system and my ego would love to have something handled, And every time I've ever said that, I find myself at some point down the road revisiting that set of issues or that essence or that pattern yet again with some nuance, with some deeper meaning, with some bigger medicine that's presenting itself. And so I want to just name that for us, because I wonder what would happen if we stopped trying to put a yardstick up to our quote issues and wasting time, deciding whether they're handled or not handled, because I don't really see a benefit either way. So if we say that our issues are handled, then it prevents us from being open to look at them again. So we might end up wasting time, missing signs or signals that would help us be more clear. And so what if instead of measuring in that way, we could just have like a big pool of, I feel like in the center of the pool is our essence, right? Essence with a capital E, the true invariable nature of who we are as a soul. And then outside of that, there's all of the stuff floating that's not us. And so what I see is, rather than trying to categorize and label, like, this is my relationship issues, which I have handled, and this is my eating disorder, which is now over, and then beating ourselves up or punishing ourselves when that issue presents itself in some new form or some old form. What if we didn't do that? What if we could just say there's me? That's the only measuring stick, right? And it's not really even a measuring stick, because when you're in essence, you don't actually care. But if we use that as our barometer, more so than a measuring stick, a barometer of what is presenting itself from this soup that I'm in for clearing. What illusions are still ghosting around in here that I might free myself up from, or open the door to create more space for myself. The more that I entertain that as a notion, the easier my evolution feels. And I often hear this from my clients when they begin, their journey is they start to get a sense of just how much is there. Because when we work with energy, 96% or so of everything that runs your life is subconscious. You don't even know it's happening. So when people start working with energy and they can see that all of the self-improvement they've done thus far is in this tiny sliver of 4%, it can be a little overwhelming. And then often the reaction is, oh my gosh, this evolution process is so heavy because I can see how much there is to do. I will never get done with it. And so what I like to, keep reminding us all of is there is no endpoint. We are infinite souls. So we'll always be at this. And in fact, we'll do a much better job of being at it when we stop trying to end it. Yeah. We'll do a much better job at it when we stop trying to end it. That had to be said again. That was good. So what we're going to play with today is some spring cleaning that came to my attention this week that needs to happen in my energy system. And I want to share it with you by way of a story so that it might spark in you some awareness of clues that may be presenting themselves in your life that you have been avoiding, so that you might circle back around and take another look at what's begging you to be seen. All right. And then I'm going to open the lines at some point and take a caller or two to help shed some light on wherever you may be needing some spring cleaning. So, where to begin this story? Okay, so I'm just going to begin at the beginning, which is, I don't remember if I've actually shared this here on the radio show or not. It feels new. But I actually was in an abusive relationship from the age of 14 to 21. It was off and on a little towards the end, but mostly continuously. And it was a dating violence relationship. I kept it very secret. Nobody knew it was happening. And I was very good. Like, I was very competent and capable at it. So I came from a really stable home where there wasn't any kind of violence, and was dating a guy from a really bad family where there was lots of trauma and abuse. And there were lots of issues in that relationship. And some of the themes were around me feeling like nobody really loved him and nobody could take care of him. And so I was going to be that person for him, even though many times I wanted out of the relationship, but I didn't know how to say it, And so it was mostly, verbal abuse and controlling and jealousy and all of those dynamics. But there definitely was aggression and violence at different points. And it actually escalated near the end of it. So I went off to college. We were still connected. I would come home every weekend to see him. It was a very dysfunctional relationship, and I didn't believe I had the kind of relationship with my parents that I could get their advice and counsel, because I felt like they would make me wrong for the decisions I had made to that point. And so I just kept trying to find a way out, as teenage girls will do, and as grown-up girls will do. I actually worked in domestic violence for many years after I received my master's in social work, and got very schooled on the dynamics of these kinds of relationships. And so what ended up happening near the end is I was at school, and he became very violent and crazy. And he would call and threaten me. And so there was this whole period of stalking. And at one point, my roommate got very scared, and her parents got scared for her. And so they had her come home to live with them. They lived in the same town where we went to school. Her dad was a professor. So she went home to live, but I was not invited. So I was there in my apartment, and my parents decided, and I decided, that I was probably safer there than in our hometown. So, but no one came to stay with me. And so here I am, this, 20-year-old woman alone in my apartment with this, bodybuilding, scary stalker dude threatening to come and blow me up, And in hindsight, when I look at that, it's such a expression of my soul path, right? Which is great mother, abandoned, not enough, no one helping to nurture me. I'm in trouble because I'm trying to nurture him. And then, of course, my warrior, right? Like, everything is a battle, and I'm literally fighting for my life. And there was a moment in all of that when I actually, I was laying there in bed trying to sleep. I had a knife under my pillow, and my thought process was, if he comes to kill me, and it's between him and me, it's going to be him, right? And, and that's Warrior 101. So we attract and create situations of struggle such as that. And, and there's a lot of mixture of things in that. So many sort of details of the story. Eventually, he was arrested. He was in a mental hospital for a while. He was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. He was a drug addict, so he was always very volatile. And so what ended up happening later is I married my husband. We ended up moving to another town, and we just didn't tell anyone where we lived. So we had an unlisted phone number, and so we were kind of in hiding, but my family and my all of my siblings, my parents, my husband's family, all lived in the same town as him. So it was this really kind of ongoingly tense, for years, relationship. And so, we managed to hide out for a few years. One night we came home for dinner and from dinner, and there was a message on our answering machine from him. And it was this crazy rambling, like it was clear he was high and was off of his meds. And shortly after that, he was reported missing. And so for about a year, I lived in fear. I lived in a ton of fear that he was going to show up at my work someday or that he was going to come get me. And so I say all of this detail by way of giving you a picture of how ingrained this would be in an energy system, right? Where, in some of the most formative years of what relationships look like and what, how things get programmed in and all of the evidence of not being safe, being vulnerable, and why powerful is the thing to be, and like all of that, So what ultimately happened is about a year after he went missing, he was found and he had killed himself. And he had driven his car into a lake and drowned. And so so I had done work on myself around this for years. From, when we first broke up and when I was in graduate school and all the time that I was working in the domestic violence field, I was working to understand it and to let go of it and to help others in that situation and learning about myself and why I stayed. And then later, I used my energy tools to move the residue of this out of my system. And I've had countless shamanic journeys around it and deep healing sessions around it of every kind of modality, right? And breathwork sessions around it. I mean, you name it. And every time I would do it, I would think, that's it. That's the last piece. I'm not in danger anymore. I was actually a speaker, a domestic violence survivor panel speaker for years. I worked at many different shelters and was really sort of the poster girl for surviving a relationship like that. And it's very tempting for my ego to want to put that behind me. And so at times I would talk a lot about it. And then at other times I would decide that talking about it actually made it worse. And so I would stop. And it never ceases to amaze me that, all of the things that seem unrelated, like, so for example, I had a brilliant energy session with Sway one time, who many of you know is my soul sister and brilliant therapist and energy worker. And we actually had about this recurring coughing thing that I had. And it was early on in my energy journey. And, we went in to look at what's the cause of this cough. And she said, there's just terror in your system. And I was like, really? Terror? I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even register fear. That's not really an emotion that I do, And then, of course, as we, dove into it more, of course, it was about this old relationship. And then another time I had this biofeedback appointment about all of these allergies that I have in my system. And the chiropractor says, oh, there's like PTSD in your system. And it looks like it's related to a past abusive relationship. And I was like, what? I handled that so long ago. So at this point, it's been over 20 years since I was in that relationship. And so again, here I am in this place where things are going so well for me. And my relationship with my husband has never been better, and it couldn't be further from what all of that was. It's loving and intimate and evolved and beautiful on every level. And then this week, I kept getting these signals. So one of the things that's catalyzing it is I'm going to be in ceremony this weekend, and that tends to begin moving things. As soon as you say, I'm going to be working the energy of something, you may experience that coming to these radio shows, right? Where whatever the topic is exactly what you've been dealing with. And that's because you're in the field of the show. So when I say when I decide what it is, and even sometimes before I decide what it is, all of the pieces are moving in a certain direction. And so whatever your matches are to that begin to shift and open and move. So, I've been deciding what my intention would be for what I want to clear this weekend. And I've been toying with, I'd like to, part of the warrior path is this underlying feeling of shame or being bad or wrong on some fundamental level. And I'm like, yeah, I can still feel that hanging around. I'd like to address that. I'd also like to open to more pleasure. I'd like to have my body get the memo that I'm safe so that it doesn't have to be allergic to everything, because I really want to heal my body and feel freedom there. So I'm toying with these intentions and just, noticing some. So this is what your ego will do, right? Like, well, I don't know if you should deal with that shame thing, because like, what if you open that up and you don't get all the way through, and then, you upset the apple cart because you picked the scab of shame. So I have shame about my shame. And this is how our ego works to keep us from looking, and it has many, many tricks. So when your life is good, it's going to be trying to keep you from continuing. And when your life is bad, it's going to try to keep you from moving forward, because it's like, it's going to be too heavy to do that, or you don't know where to get that done, or do you want to revisit the old trauma, blah, blah, blah. Your ego is very smart about keeping it safe. So this is what I've been playing with in my intention. And then one synchronicity after another presents itself. The first one being a very good friend who texted me heading into the weekend saying she was having some serious relationship drama and needed some support. And my reaction was, I don't have capacity for that, right? I don't want to deal with relationship drama right now. I just want to have fun and be with my family. And so I didn't actually help her with that. And then my husband's been out of town. And so Friday night, my husband, or my children, who are amazingly telepathic and empathic, out of the blue started asking me questions about domestic violence, and then pointedly asking me, have I ever been in a situation like that? And has anyone ever hit me? And what did I do? And I've never told them about this story. They didn't have any idea about it. They're 12 and 11. And I ended up telling them the entire story based on the questions they were asking. They heard all of it, even to the point, the parts about him killing himself and that. And that felt like a beautiful sharing. It felt useful and teaching and really nice. And then another very close friend texted about some serious relationship drama that she's having. And wouldn't you know that it exactly mirrors the relationship drama that I had with that guy. So it's, a substance using spouse with increasingly violent behavior who's now acting crazy. And so I found myself in the middle of that, in the middle of like now her needing a place to be, me wanting to stand with her and also not save her, and not wanting to be, in a position of like fighting her husband. And so I was just having this reflection, like, what is all of this? Because I feel so sane in the center. I feel like I'm on top of my game, and yet this stuff is happening. So I need to take a look. Oh, and one of my clients also is having some major relationship drama that has a similar twist, like some controlling, sort of scary, jealousy looking behaviors from the man she's with. And so, yeah, when all signs point a certain direction, you better start looking at the direction, right? So even though consciously I could not fathom how I still have relationship drama, because I'm only looking at the relationship I'm in, which is not dramatic in any way. And of course, I've handled that issue. I wasn't willing to see it. But when I got on the phone with Viv and said, okay, I just want to be witnessed here. Here's what I'm creating. And just so you know I'm good, I probably just want you to take a look at it. And she said, she was like, you're totally pre-working your journey. And I was like, what? Absolutely, that's what's happening. And it was, essentially, so I've created another opportunity for a nuance to unfold here, where as my beautiful husband is doing his deep work of stepping into his power and shifting the dynamics in our relationship to allow him to be fully in his divine masculine, inviting me to be in my divine feminine, there are more layers that can now move, because it's even safer for me to let go of more of that old story. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like there's so much richness in our experiences, and we miss sucking the marrow out of those when we're trying to keep putting them back in the box, and tying a bow on them. And so, again, like I'm just taking my own medicine here, which is great. So what else can I look at here? What else needs to move so that I can be even more free, right? So I used to say, so I can finally be free of this. And I'm not even saying that now. It's like, I want to be even more free. So whatever next layer is presenting itself here so that I can be more free, I am up for that 1,000,000%. And even just the awareness of that begins to free me, because I'm not having to spend energy sitting on top of the box, trying to pretend like there's not some monster knocking to come out. It's just like, okay, there's a monster there, and I have a container for where and how I'm going to work with that energy. So in the meantime, I'm being very gentle with myself. I've brought my people up to speed, right? So Viv knows, my husband knows, my friend who's staying with me knows. And it's just like, everybody take responsibility for you. And also just know this is what's happening for me, and in that way, it's not shameful. It's not heavy. It's not, oh my gosh, I have to go back into the depths. It's actually, I can create this container that has plenty of room in it for me to explore and navigate and cast off what no longer serves me, and still come out the other side feeling amazing, still coming out empowered and peaceful. And so I hope that actually opens something for you too. I feel like there are probably many of you who are getting signs of where to look next or what's calling your attention, and you may be running from it. And so the invitation is to pause and just see what next layers are coming to claim you. What's tapping on your door, and are you willing to open it and take a peek? So what I would love to do with you today is invite you to call in. The call-in number is 937-552-2747, 937-552-2747. If there is something that you would like to cast off but haven't been able to let go of, if you would like some extra insight into what is calling to you or where you can be more free, whatever's on your mind in the vein of spring cleaning your energy system, I invite you to call in and we'll just take a look together. My intention is that as we do this, we continue to make it the norm for us to look at our stuff without shame, without guilt, without feeling like we're the only one who has something. And instead, really just stand together in the same way we would if our friend showed up and she had a broken arm, and we would all be like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? What happened? Tell me about it. But we're not making her wrong, and she's not feeling embarrassed about it, and she doesn't have to hide it or pretend like she doesn't have one, And so I feel the same with these, dark corners of our psyches and our unconsciousness, is bringing the shadow to light. And instead of this weird setup that we have, this very masculine compartmentalization, like, oh, I had that thing and now I don't have that thing, and then I fixed it and I'm done. It's like, of course you have that thing. You had, 7 years in the relationship, and whoops. All right, well, I guess I'm answering the phone because I don't know how to mute that one. So here we go. Oh, hi, this is Jody. You're on the air. Let's see if I can hear it. Can you hear me? Let me close Skype on my other computer and see if that makes it any better. Okay, you may be muted on your end, so just double check that. All right. Okay, whoops, Viv says they accidentally hung up. Okay, perfect. So we'll get them back, and then we'll try again. Great. So what I was saying is, so what we do is we just make it okay. Like, of course, after all of these years of experiences and evidence and pain and trauma and all of that, there's all kinds of little cubby holes and cellular programming and residue that will need to be cleaned. And we don't have to make that mean anything other than The same way that we clean our houses in the spring and it's like, yeah, of course it's a little musty in here. We've had the doors closed all winter, and then we start to open and freshen and let go of, things that we don't actually need anymore. So we'll just hang out here for a little bit and we'll wait to get a call back. And in the meantime, so even if you're not planning to call in, what you might do in this space is actually just take a breath. Just take a breath and be willing to turn inward to see, is there anything in your space that has been calling to you? Are there any signs that haven't been making sense that you might be having a tug at your skirt to turn and take a look at? What else? Because you can clear right along with the women who are going to be calling in here. I want to just say hi to Valerie for listening. She's chatting with us through our app, I believe. And if those of you who are listening would like to head over to our Facebook page, we can chat there as well. That's WSMRchat.com. WSMRchat.com. Great. So Viv, just so you know, it looks like the call still may actually be sitting here in mine, or maybe it's passed. So we'll give Viv a minute to field all of the calls. And just so you know, once I begin taking a caller, we can't actually receive any more calls. So call in now, even if you're not 100% sure you want to talk, and that way you can at least get in the queue, and then we may have time to get to you or we may not, but it's good to do it proactively rather than later. So the call-in number again is 937-552-2747. All right, here we go. The call-in number again. Hi, this is Jody. You're on the air. Who's this?
Hi, Jody. This is Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. We can
Hi,
actually...
I'm sorry about the...
Oh, no problem. No problem. We can... Actually, it's gone now. Okay, I was going to say I could hear my echo, but now I can't. So, great. Perfect. So, let's drop in. Tell me about what you would like to take a look at today.
Okay. I told Viv I came in a little late, and I got to read a little bit about, what you were talking about. And I'm noticing... I don't even know where to begin. Okay. Abandonment fears that they don't seem reasonable, but I'm trying to stay with me. And it's happening in a lot of different areas. Like, my son is getting married and we're working on our house, and I started painting a mandala on my office floor months ago, and one day I just closed the door and didn't go in there anymore. And so I've been looking at how I abandoned my own creativity. And then yesterday I was invited to have dinner with some friends from out of town, and I literally panicked and wanted to run home because I thought, it doesn't matter whether it's odd. It doesn't feel at all logical, but it's like, it doesn't matter whether I come or not. They didn't call before now. All kinds of, I'm going to be, it's like I'm rejecting my artwork. I'm being rejected, or I believe I'm being rejected even before it happens. And it's such an old thing that, like you expressed, it felt like it was gone and back again.
Yeah. Great. So thank you for the examples too, because it can kind of help us to see these things that seem unrelated are always related. So as you were talking, I was just feeling like there's so much grief hanging around your space. It feels almost like a cement block that you're encrusted in. And it feels like your fear about the grief of being abandoned, of having been abandoned, is so great that you're trying to avoid that, but it's that vibration that has you continue to experience the abandonment. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so I wonder, it feels to me like the spring cleaning to do would be around, can we offload some of this grief and see what's possible from there?
Okay.
Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You may have already started to offload some. Yeah. Yeah. So the invitation here is to let all of that snot out. Go ahead and just like cry right into that. I'd like you to actually imagine that. So close your eyes and see if you can tune into, it feels to me like all the heaviness is near the bottom half of you. So it's related to the root chakra, but it's also really around your feet and legs, like you're standing in it, you know? And FYI, it feels old, you know, it's not only this lifetime, but it feels like many lifetimes of grief, being the last one standing. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's begin with, what if you could take a chisel and a magic hammer and let's just poke around where your feet are so we can at least free your feet from this big brick. Just so you can step up out of it and take a look at it without that feeling of being trapped. So this is what happens when our system gets overloaded by all of this grief. Then we end up finding ourselves on the run, right? So it's like, I'll abandon you before you abandon me, you know? And then we start doing things like, I don't know why I didn't go to dinner, but I just felt like they were assholes, you know? Yeah, or I won't make this commemorative mandala for my son because he's a jerk, right? So I'm abandoning him. But at least I know where it's coming from, so it feels safer, you know? Mm-hmm. So what do you notice as you begin to free your feet? Are you able to step up out of that big hunk of concrete? What are you noticing?
Well, I was trying to visualize being, you know, on top of the block, but it feels like it's around my ankles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was getting that too. And what I was getting is there's a lesson in the grief that you're going to need to get before you can actually move it. So let's just imagine you could sit down.
Okay.
And I actually see it wrapped right around your ankles, you know, and ankles are our ability to receive pleasure. So it's all related. It's all related. You are a great mother to the T. Do you know that? Yeah, that is your soul path. So just go ahead and have a seat there on the concrete. And I'd like you to imagine you can put your hands on it and just, you know, appreciate it. Appreciate the amalgamation that it is and solidness, and there may be some energy emanating off of it. So just feel all of that. Yeah, so what do you notice as you do that?
It's just a strange place to be appreciating something that's so heavy and constricting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we never really give ourselves the space to do that, do we? Yep. And yet, there's a reason why you have been the last one standing in all of these lifetimes, because there was something you were exploring. There was something your soul wanted to know about that. And so you were experiencing it from all of the different sides of the coin, you know? Mm-hmm. And now you have the opportunity to actually put the pieces together and see why all the grief. What's it about? What's it here for? So what do you notice as you tune into that?
I think I'm grieving my inability to just not grieve.
Mm.
I just see so much loss everywhere. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like me having shame about my shame, right? You have grief about your grief. Isn't that wild?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I share the grief one too. You know, that's a big part of my path as well. And it's easy to get in that space of wallowing. In some ways, and in some ways we try to hover above it because it feels like it would swallow us. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it has. Because in those other lifetimes when you're the last one standing and you've lost everyone, that is some painful shit. Yep. And yet there's some reason we chose that path. There's some reason we chose that experience. And so in some ways it is about the grief, and it's also not about the grief. So I wonder what else there is in there. I wonder if you could actually choose one of the lifetimes and have the version of yourself from that lifetime meet you here on this plateau of concrete. And let me know when you see her.
I do see someone.
Yeah. And you could just have her sit right beside you, her or him.
Okay.
All right. And maybe you could ask them. You can ask it out loud, or you can just do it in the energy space. What is the point of all this suffering?
What is the point of all this suffering?
Mm-hmm. And what do you get?
She's just smiling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard her say.
That pisses me off.
It pisses you off. Yeah, right? Yeah, what pisses you off about it?
Tell me.
Mm-hmm. Because?
The old I need to know.
Mm-hmm. So that?
So I can get this block on my feet.
Mm-hmm.
I can get out of here.
Yeah. So tell me what all this suffering is about so I can stop suffering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why she's smiling. Yeah. Yeah, it's a version of what I heard her say is, are you suffering? Mm. Mm-hmm. Try it on.
No, it feels like old stuff.
I know. It's like putting on that chartreuse blazer you've had in the back of your closet. And like, why was I keeping this thing? Where did I think I would wear that again? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff happened. And it happened to give you an experience of suffering so you could come to this moment and realize suffering is a story. It's a choice. Because here you are, an infinite being having a different experience. So even when the suffering, I say that in quotes, even when the suffering happened, you weren't diminished. She's not diminished. She's sitting there smiling. And in a sense, there's freedom in this idea of permanence, right? Because if you think about, as a great mother, we're so worried about abandonment. And so our whole life is about like detaching or letting go. But if we're permanent and there's no suffering, that sort of handles that story, doesn't it?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So see if she'd be willing to help you take your feet up out of that concrete. And she may need to bathe them in some gold so they're a little atrophied, right?
She actually chiseled it off first.
Beautiful. She's got a lot of Mary qualities to her. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, she is the queen of the great mothers. She knows a lot about suffering. Sorry, go ahead.
I had a lot of problems with my feet. And I changed my diet. I've been doing a lot of good things for me. And this morning when I was hiking, I felt one of those pains again. It's just so interesting that it's all at my feet.
Yeah, of course it is. You know, and our feet are actually governed by our root chakra. And the root chakra is where we register safety and security. Right? So it's like, yeah, if you've had so many lifetimes around everyone dying and suffering, it's like, we're not safe here. When people leave, I'm not safe. And there's really I'm not safe if I'm invited or not invited. You know, I'm not safe connected or alone.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And all of that old story can just be contained there in that giant block of concrete. And you can step right up out of it and just be willing to be with this fresh start of what are your feet? You know, what do they feel like? What's true about them? You know, as you just check them out here in the energy space, imagine yourself taking some steps, dancing around. And you can actually allow them to send the memo to the rest of your body, right? So the rest of your body has learned to be very still as a match to having feet in cement, right?
Yes.
But this sense of joyful bounciness, they're almost like kangaroo feet or something, right? Like they look very light and new. You can allow that energetic to just clean up through your system. So any old stories in the rest of your system that aren't in alignment with this freshness, go ahead and just allow them to get the memo and move their way out as well. So there might be some cracking off that happens, some crumbling. Just have that occur. You may actually move your body a bit here too. Stretch or, yep. Raise your arms. Gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah, and here's what I'm noticing is there's a way that you can dance even more joyfully on top of this plateau of cement because you've really had this contrasting experience, right? It's all of that suffering that allows this lightness to happen right now, right? She gets it. She gets it. Yay.
Yeah, I get it.
Uh-huh.
While you were talking, I was drawing animal tracks.
Mm.
Had no idea why, but I was drawing animal tracks, footprints.
Mm.
Someone sent me a video this week of, excuse my French, but I just want to fucking dance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all I've done for 2 weeks whenever I get a moment is dance to that. And then all of this abandonment rushed in yesterday and how concrete and thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Beautiful work, sister. Thank you for letting us witness you.
Thank you, Jody.
Mm-hmm. All right. Bye for now, sister.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So gorgeous. Yeah, actually, I feel like that really feels complete. That was such a perfect example. And what I actually feel, Debbie, is that you are a processor for many. And so as you clear that, you make that vibration available for everyone listening. So right now, if you're listening, I invite you to close your eyes and invite your own system to match the freedom in Debbie's system. Just say that to yourself. I invite my system to match the freedom in Debbie's system. And just notice what happens. You don't even have to always know what it's about. That's the beautiful thing about energy, is the molecules are, because we're really all one at the molecular level, when you change the spin of one molecule, the other molecule wants to change its spin to match and will. And so as you give it permission, you just accelerate the speed of the possibility of the match. And so I actually felt a huge opening in my own belly around that. I felt a relaxing. My shoulders came down. I feel a tingling in my own feet and ankles. And I can feel in my left back that there's a part of me wanting to hold on to something that would otherwise release. So I invite you to take a second pass now and say, anything in me that I've been holding on to not being free, I choose to let go of that now. Just like imagine it opening up your energetic hands so that each cell can open up and let go of anything related to grief, loss, abandonment, being the last one standing, having to suffer. You could just let go of all of that so that you can be dancing with Debbie in this space of bouncy, joyful spring pleasure. And so it is. So happy spring cleaning to all of you on the physical level as you let go of things in your home and your space that no longer serve, and most especially in your energy system as you take a look at the things that are claiming and calling to you, give them the attention they deserve, and then lovingly show them the way out so that you might become more free and more clear as you return home to the truth of you. And so until next time, my sisters, love to you and all that you are. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.